right, good morning, Bardstown and Nelson County. Welcome to Bradford and Brooks. Jim Brooks and Margie Bradford with you today until the noon hour, and then stay tuned to WBRT for the best in local news and information. Well, Margie, the weather seems to be continuing to be nice, and the spring is here.
I think spring has sprung.
And so has the tree pollen.
Yeah. Well, you can tell by the wheezing that you hear every now and then from either one of us. Yes.
That's
right.
Yes,
it's gorgeous out there.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
Even a little rainy, but still, that's what spring is, you know, a little rain to make everything grow.
Well, I tell you, driving in on Louisville Road, the Bradford pears are in full bloom, and though the pollen can choke me up, the trees, just so many of those Bradford pears in bloom, just look beautiful.
Yes, yeah, they are. Shame they have such weak branches and break and fall in your yard.
I know it. I know it. I don't have any in my yard, but I have them in neighbors. I can appreciate the view from afar. Well, Margie, we're going to continue our series of interviews with candidates that will be involved in the May primary. And our candidate today is a Republican candidate for Nelson County Judge Executive, which is really kind of the top spot in running county government.
Right.
It's Don Thrasher will be our guest, and he is on the phone and waiting to join us. Let me, if I can get all the buttons pushed in the right order, we'll be on with Don Thrasher. All right. Good morning, Don. Are you with us? Oh, wait a minute.
Can't hear him.
No, wait. Helps if I hit all the right buttons. Yeah. Good morning, Don.
Good morning, Jim. Good morning, Margie.
Good morning, Don.
Well, Don, thanks for joining us this morning. Great to have you on.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you both again.
Well, Don, tell us, for our listeners who may not know much about Don Thrasher as a candidate for Judge Executive, give us a little background and a little bit about who you are and why you're running.
Yes, sir. Well, my name's Don Thrasher. I am a conservative Republican. I am the former chairman of the Republican Party here in Nelson County. I didn't seek re-election last year for party chair because I knew I'd be running this year, and I was pretty sure that we have a lot of primaries this year, so that's why I didn't want to be chair, because I think, questions arise when it's kind of a conflict, and I just didn't want that to happen again. But anyway, I did enjoy the 3 years that I was chairman of the local party. I think we accomplished a lot. We improved Republican voter registration exponentially, and that's been the case throughout the state. Also, not just here in Nelson County, but we did implement a lot of new methods of trying to get people involved, Republicans involved locally. And I think for those that don't know me, I lived here about 12 years, and my dad was living here at the time, and he was dying of congestive heart failure. He had 2 years to live, and so I moved here to live with him till the last couple of years of his life, because they said that he was didn't have too long to live. So he asked me. He knows that I'm a Type A personality like him. He had his first heart attack when he was 39.
Wow.
And I'm kind of a very high drive Type A type person. He knows how I am. So he's like, Don, why don't you move here, and slow down and, smell the coffee or smell the roses and don't drink so much coffee. So, and I took his advice, and I lived here after he passed away, and I've enjoyed it here. I love Nelson County. I obviously I miss my dad, but I enjoy being here. And the reason I even got involved in politics was about 4 years ago. Well, a little over 4 years, maybe 4.5, I guess. We woke up one day and got a letter from Dean Law saying that our road name was changed, and I found that a little strange because the street signs went up the same day, and I said no. I asked some of my neighbors. I was like, did you know about this? They're like, no one told us. No one knew anything about it. So I called the dean and I asked him about it. He said, yeah, I can change whatever name any street I want. I could name every street in Nelson County Dean Watts Road if I wanted to. Not to say he wanted to. He just used it as an example. But and it just kind of struck me wrong. I said, I don't believe that this is what America's about. So as you know, you were up there the first day I went up there. Court. I started saying, I just didn't think it was the right way to do things. And so ever since then, it's kind of snowballed, and I've gotten involved, and someone talked me, or a couple of people had asked me after a couple of appearances up at fiscal court. They're like, "Why don't you run against Dean?" Because it just happens to be that a month or 2 months later was the filing deadline for Republican for judge executives. And they said, no one's probably going to run as a Republican. Why don't you step up and do it? I'm like, no, you're crazy. There was no way I'm going to run for office. First off, I had no desire to. Second of all, I was like, I can't win. And one of the people that asked me to do it, they said, I guess you have to define winning. If winning is just getting elected and getting in that office, if that's winning to you, then you can define it two ways. If you can make a difference by running, by bringing up issues that could help change and make where you live a better place, and that really struck me. I'm like, what? I guess I will run. And after a couple of times of people saying run, I finally said, okay, you know what? I will run. So I did. And first time out, I'll be honest with you, I like people, and I like to try and help people. And so when all kinds of people, when I first filed, all kinds of people came up and they said, well, here's the problem with this. I'm having trouble with this. This is how they're doing things wrong. So I would take things and run with it, because that's just my nature. Mm-hmm. If someone says, this and that, or this department's doing this, and can you help me with this? So, my first time out, I by the way, I've learned a lot and matured in terms of political things a lot in the last 4 years, because I've learned that you have to look at both sides of things, and you can't just to criticize everything out of the gate and take you can't be doing that. And I think that was one valuable lesson I've learned. But it doesn't mean I'm not going to fight for people. And I think that's one of the biggest reasons I even want to be in there, is because people have issues and problems, and you want to try and help those people. Because after I was running, people said, we just don't have a voice. Mm-hmm. And I know I've said this over and over on your show before, but that's when you have people that don't have a voice, it resonates with me, because that's the way I felt. That's the way my neighbors felt on our road. Mm-hmm. When we didn't have a voice in naming our own road. I mean, that's a fundamental issue with how our government is supposed to be. But anyway, when I first ran, obviously I did pretty good, for the first time. I believe it was like a little over 38%, and mm-hmm. there was Jack Hurst got 10%, and Dean got the other. I think it's like 51.5 or something like that. But anyway, after that, a couple of people asked me. They're like, "Well, why don't you run for chairman?" Because Robert Augustine had just resigned, and so I ran for that, and I won, and I was thankful and appreciative that people would put the stewardship of the county party, in my hands, and I was honored to do that. And I think that the best way that we can serve our community is to be involved. And I'll be honest with you, for the first 8-9 years that I lived here, I wasn't involved politically.
Right.
But I am now.
Well, Don, I appreciate that. Of course, I kind of witnessed a lot of that, your entry into politics, and the road naming affected me too. So, I think everybody appreciates the changes that allowed them to at least have a opportunity to voice, their thoughts on road names. So.
Yes, sir. And that was one of the things I wanted when I settled the issue with Dean in the fiscal court. That was one of the things I asked for is if there's a future road name change in this county, people have to have notice and they have to have a hearing. There has to be a public hearing on the road name because. And I'm proud of that. And, a lot of people are just like, well, it's just a road name. Well, it wasn't your road name, and it's I get it. People, until something really affects them, or you have to walk in other people's shoes, to appreciate their point of view. And so I try to. I've tempered myself because you have to. When someone says, "Well, it's just a road name," well, yeah, it is just a road name, but it's also the principle of the thing.
Right.
And for me, a lot of things are about principle. I think that's where we've lost a lot of our way with politics. In our country is people are less likely to do something for principle and more for political gain, and I don't think that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Don, you're talking about your motivation for running, but what about your qualifications? I think that the people would like to hear about what specific qualifications you have that you think that you have for fulfilling the highest office in the county.
Yes, ma'am. And I believe that I am quite qualified. I think I started a soda company, and to give you some history on that, there were diabetics out there. My dad was a diabetic, and he was his choice was either a soda with NutraSweet in it or sugar, and so I said, why is there no natural alternative to this?
Mm-hmm.
So I had found that there's a plant called stevia, and it grows and it's native to Brazil and Paraguay. And so the FDA hadn't approved it yet. Well, they approved it for a dietary supplement, but they hadn't approved it for a technical ingredient in a beverage or any food. Mm-hmm. So I said, we need to do something about that. So I started a soda company called Thrasher Beverage, and it was a cola and an orange flavored soda. And I had to call it a carbonated dietary supplement. I had the idea. I said, well, if we can't use it as a functional soda or functional food product, why don't we call it a dietary supplement? Because that we can legally call it a dietary supplement because it was approved for that purpose. Mm-hmm. So while I was also seeking approval from the FDA for stevia, I was the first one to start a beverage company with stevia in it because I called it a carbonated dietary supplement.
Right.
So our first product, V-Cola, was the first carbonated dietary supplement in U.S. history. And so about 3 years after I started the company, the FDA approved stevia. So we were the first ones. My company, Drink Zevia, was the first ones on the market, and we had the head start on anybody because we already were hit the ground running, and we're in stores as a carbonated dietary supplement. So now, my former company that I used to work for, that I co-founded, is the largest selling natural soda company in the United States. They currently have a market cap of about $500 million.
Wow. And
it's a publicly traded company. Zevia, the ticker symbol is ZVA, and I started that from ground one. I did the budget. I stayed within. I have to stay within the budget. When you're doing something with your own money, you have to stay the budget. I know people are going to talk about budgets, and you know what? Budgets are important, but you have to. From an entrepreneurial standpoint, doing something like that, knowing the regulations, I had to meticulously go through. And Jim, I'm sure you know, I go through laws, I go through policies, I go through everything. I'm a voracious reader. I love research and reading, and you have to do that as judge executive. You want someone that is going to know the laws, knows the timing of things. I know what the fiscal court's responsibilities are like the back of my hand.
Right.
I have gone through anything and everything in terms of be it the landfill, solid waste. I know when things are supposed to be done because I've reviewed all these rules, all these laws. And so that's another one of my qualifications. But anyway, I think the base qualification is you have to, and you know, my predecessor, well, he will be the predecessor of that position soon, Mr. Watts, you know, who I like. I like Dean. I think he's a nice person. He's treated me with respect. I think, you know, he was a manager of a local store in, you know, Louisville store. And I think, you know, that was his qualifications was managing a small store. And I think my qualifications are just as good, if not better, than Mr. Watts was, because you to start your own company and to utilize, you didn't know what I had to go through to have FDA approval on things. You talk about a regulatory quagmire. Try and start a company that's trying to revolutionize how people consume stevia. Which, by the way, stevia is now just ubiquitous almost.
Oh yeah,
But you know, I was literally and there's another product that we also included is called erythritol, and it's a sugar alcohol, and it was mixed. We were the first ones to ever use stevia and erythritol in a product, and Cargill is the one that produced erythritol, and we were the first ones to use the Cargill erythritol product in a soda, and you know, when you're dealing with big companies, you have to negotiate contracts. And I negotiated the first contract with Cargill for Aridex. Aridex was the trade name for erythritol. And, you know, you have to, I think my qualifications are I have dealt in business with these kinds of issues, with contracts, budgets, regulatory issues. And I think if you guys have followed what I've done in the issues that I've brought up subsequent to the road name with the fiscal court, I think you would agree that I have the knowledge that it takes to be judge executive.
All right. Well, Don, the candidates I've been talking to, one of the questions I ask everybody is, what are the three biggest challenges you see facing Nelson County, especially Nelson County government, looking ahead if you're successful and you're the next judge executive, and what are your thoughts on solving those, and from what perspective do you take? So I would say the top issues right now are, you know, we have one of the highest property tax rates in the state of Kentucky. And I did a poll on Facebook. There's a Facebook group that I did a poll on. And when you do a Facebook group poll, you know everybody that, you know, it's not one of those phony polls where, like, you say, oh, well, you can't, you know, you call somebody, you just came up with these numbers. These aren't phony polls. These are actual people that you can actually go in and see how they voted in this poll on Facebook. Anyway, the top ones was too high of property tax, which I completely agree with. We're getting gouged, and you know, you've heard me over and over again talk about this, Jim. You know, this is one of my big issues is property taxes. Now, everybody's going to say, well, you know, most of it's school districts. Yeah, right. You know what? They're right. But like I said in 2018, you know, the judge executive of this county, and you guys both have alluded to this, is the highest ranking
pretty much the highest ranking government official in this county. Now, that gives you a bully pulpit.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's being utilized. Look, we've overspent. When they built Thomas Nelson High School, they built that on projections, inaccurate population projections.
Right.
The numbers down there are low. That's why there's this merger talk, because there's not enough kids at Thomas Nelson to actually keep that. If you were a business, if this was a private business, you would say, why was Thomas Nelson ever built? So there's been a lot of waste at our school district, Nelson County School District. I'm not familiar with I'm not familiar with Bardstown Independent School District as much, but I do know Nelson County School District and their spending. I know their budget, and I think that there is a lot of waste, and I think anybody that is taking a look at it, no one's speaking up for no one, like in government, is speaking up for the taxpayers when it comes to local school taxes and how much is being spent at Nelson County School District.
What would you qualify as waste?
Well, we can.
Just remember, Don, you're talking to a former school board member here.
Yeah. So, I went in. I met with Wes Bradley about 3 months ago. I go in, and I like Wes. I think Wes is a nice guy. He's a really, really nice guy. He's very intelligent. But there's sitting in there like pens, like some of the fanciest pens I've seen with like Nelson County School branding and like all this stuff with all this branding. It's, I think that's great. If you're a corporation and you've got fancy pens and fancy logos with all these fancy cups and everything, I think that is great. But you know what? If you're a school district with a lot of rural people that have to pay property taxes on former farms, I think you're spending stuff. That, to me, is waste. Does Thomas Nelson High School really need a lake? Does Thomas Nelson High School, did it really have to be that fancy? That's a question. See, we can have plain stuff. This whole concept. Somebody has talked to the school board members into saying our kids need the best of everything in order to have the best education. Don't you want us to have the best? Don't you want our kids to have the best? Well, look, you can teach a kid in a school with good teachers, regardless of whether or not it has fancy pens or fancy chairs, or you can spend $200 on a brand new table and chair, or you can buy some used furniture and a $10 chair and a $15 table. That to me is waste. So you know what? People need to start pointing this out, because you know what? These school board members, I don't necessarily blame them, because somebody's guilt tripping them into saying, well, don't you want our kids to have the best? See, that's where we get in trouble. We don't need. Look. Kids need the best learning. They need the best education possible. You can go and look at all kinds of wasteful spending over there, and I have. And those pens and cups and things. Those are my examples. We don't need fancy branding. This isn't a corporation. This isn't some a profit corporation that's bringing in profits. This is people's pocketbook that they're forced to pay these property taxes. Look, if you don't pay those property taxes, you know what happens? You come and seize your property. So some of these older people that live around me, and I've talked to plenty of them, and they say, I know a couple of elderly people. They're ready to move. They're ready to sell the farm and say, we're moving out of this county because it costs too much. So when I say wasteful spending, that's what I'm talking about, Margie. I can go in. I can give you a list. If you really want a list, I can write a huge list. But all I'm saying is that's not my job, but it would be a big priority for me to use the bully pulpit of the judge executive office, which isn't being utilized now, to keep costs down in this county to other things. Because you know what? Whether or not the school district is under the judge executive's purview, I sure have a bully pulpit, and I'll be more than happy to go up there and point out wasteful spending. Another thing, let's talk about the library. Now, this is something that the judge executive can do something about.
Right.
Hold on, let me get some water. I'm sorry. So
okay, go ahead.
Let's talk about the library. Hardin County has 115,000 people. They have a budget of about $1 million for their library. Nelson County has 45,000 residents. We spend over $3 million for our library. So they have over double the population, spend $1 million. We have 45,000, spend $3 million. Now everybody's going to say, well, don't we want the best? Don't we want the best? You know, hey, it's relative. We're talking about a taxing district. You talk about our country was one of the reasons we were founded was taxation without representation. We said England, you know, is telling us, is taxing us. We don't have any say in it. Well, those people on that Nelson County Library Board are appointed.
Right.
But once they're on there, they are their own taxing district. They have the right to tax us, you know, as much as they can, up to 4% before recall
right.
of repeal of that tax. But the county judge executive is the one that makes those appointments to that board. Now, the board sends a list to the judge executive of names.
Right.
It has to be cleared through the state library. They do their background checks and make sure everything's qualified. Then they send it back to the judge executive. The judge executive makes the decision and makes a point, and then it's up to the fiscal court whether or not to agree with the judge executive's appointment. So if we are spending 3 times as much as a county twice as big as us, why are we spending that much? What are we spending it on? $4,000. You want to talk about waste, Margie? Let's talk about $4,500 worth of fireworks. Let's talk about $150 an hour face painters at the Nelson County School District. Why do we need face painters for a library? You know, whether or not it was a festival or whatever, it's still taxpayer money being paid by the library district. We don't need face painters at a library district. What we need to keep costs down, and you don't need fancy fireworks to publicize a library. It just doesn't make sense. Look, either you're going to go in there and read a book, either you're going to go in there and take a book, or use one of the other. And don't get me wrong, I love books. I'm a voracious reader. I enjoy. I think libraries are great. We need them. We need resources at a library, but we don't need fireworks. We don't need $4,000 worth of fireworks, face painters. We don't need that the employees up there getting meals all the time, and we don't need the director getting an extremely large salary with a credit card that if you go up to BJ's steakhouse and use a library credit card for dinner. Well, you know what? I have a problem with that.
Right.
So anyway, the county judge executive appoints these people, and I will tell you right now, I will reject anyone and everyone that doesn't come into my office and say, we are going to do something about this spending. We're going to keep this spending in line because we're tired of it. There are people lined up and ready to get in there and start doing away with the waste because you know what? Again, this is about taxpayers. My focus as judge executive of this county is about taxpayers. And you know what? For too long, the taxpayers of Nelson County have been getting the wrong end of the stick, and it's evident by looking at the chart of county taxes on a statewide level. So if you want to keep everything as status quo, and let's let the library run rampant, let's let the school district run rampant, don't elect me. That's fine. But you know what? I'm the alternative. And you know what? I think it resonates with a lot of people in this county. This is common sense stuff. Other people, and that's another thing. I really want to bring this up. Tim Hutchins, and I liked him, but he called me up one night, right before he filed he called me up 11 o'clock at night on Friday night and said, you're not from here. You shouldn't be running. I don't think you should be running because you're not even from here. I said, Tim, I guess that doesn't make sense to me because, I've lived here 12 years and, I think I have something valuable. He's like, yeah, but you're not from here. He's like, and I go off and tell him, how I should, Anyway, my point being is the people, it's not necessarily an advantage to, being here, being a lifelong resident is great. But you know what? I'm prepared to rock the boat when it comes to taxes, when it comes to people spending too much money. And I think our boat needs to be rocked. And, I think if people want to keep paying high taxes, you don't rock the boat, everything will be fine. But you know what? At some point, those, like some of my neighbors that are going to be moving, that's what's happening with, all kinds of people are ready to, over, like Joe Biden and the gas tax.
Right.
Elections have consequences. If you want to, you can vote for the status quo. You can vote for, somebody that's not going to, raise issues with the library, the school district. But you know what? You're going to get what you vote for. And if you vote for Joe Biden, you have big, high gas prices. And then I'm going to hear people, oh, well, the president has nothing to do with gas prices. Okay, well, let's look at that for a minute. Gas prices. President Trump can call up Saudi Arabia and UAE and say,
what does this have to do with the schools? What does this have to do with running for?
Well, if you'd let me finish, Margie, I'll tell you.
Go ahead, Don.
I lost my train of thought. Okay, so if Joe Biden calls up, or President Trump called up Saudi Arabia and said, hey, can you please start pumping some more oil and send it over? You know what they did? They started calling them up. This was documented. 2 weeks ago, Joe Biden tries to call Saudi Arabia and UAE. They wouldn't even take his call. So you know what? Presidents can affect prices of gasoline regardless of what some of these leftists say. What I'm saying, Margie, is this. Elections have consequences. And we can all ignore the policies of the Democratic Party, but I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to ignore it. So when I say, what this has to do with local elections is this. Elections have consequences. If you want to vote for Joe Biden, you're going to have high gas prices. President Trump predicted it. If you want to vote for somebody other than Don Thrasher, if they're not talking about the library in the school district, ask them why. Because you know what? I'm the only one, to my knowledge, that's bringing these issues up. So how does it relate to what we're talking about, Margie? I'll tell you. Elections have consequences, and I'm using it as an illustration. It's called an analogy.
Well, Don, we're getting down to the wire on time, and I wanted to get in a couple of other questions. I know that you've in some of your advertising, you're talking about reducing regulations. For example, planning and zoning. Are there specifics there that you think are onerous or a burden on the homeowners or developers?
So last night I went to the planning and zoning had a comprehensive plan update meeting,
right.
And I went through all that, and I got to talk to several people up there about it. And when I talk about reducing regulations in planning and zoning, so here's the other thing. So the county judge executive appoints the 5 county members on the Planning and Zoning Commission. Now, a lot of people don't understand how the Planning and Zoning Commission works. So there are 5 seats that the county has, and the city, I believe, has 3. Well, the city of Bardstown has, I believe, 3, and then Fairfield has 1, and Bloomfield and New Haven have 1 or 2. And so that's the planning and zoning is not technically under the county. It's a quasi-governmental agency that is under the commission, actually. So Jan Johnson Crow reports to the commission, the Joint Planning and Zoning Commission, not the judge executive. I know there's a misnomer about that.
Right.
Now, obviously, the county has the most influence on the Planning and Zoning Commission in terms of appointments. But what I want to do is my approach to it will be I want to ask whoever the appointees are going to be for Nelson County's appointees, what is your thoughts on regulations? Are you more prone to reducing regulations? Are you more what are your thoughts? Because that, to me, is what we can do there. I don't think. I think, and I pointed this out to a couple of people. We need a balance here with our planning and zoning. There's growth, but there's also the current residential views and needs, and we need to take both into account. Everything needs balance. We just need balance, and I think one of the key issues for me is if we have planning and zoning that people are feeling are onerous. Let's talk about that. Let's find out why we have. I mean, there's developers that say that they have problems.
Right.
Now is it an issue with infrastructure? Because we can't have growth without sewers in this county. I mean, you can build houses, but you can't build a development. You can't build a subdivision without sewer lines coming in, and we have to address that at some point. And whether or not we connect into. I see Louisville Water. We're getting Louisville Water. I think that's great, but in reducing regulations, I think it needs to be done organically from what are people's problems with the current regulations, and like.
Well, Don, I tell you what, Don, I hate to cut you off, Don, but we're getting down to the wire, and I've got several commercial spots I have to get in before the top.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jim. So anyway, like the storage container issue, you remember?
Yeah.
One of the magistrates brought up the banning the storage containers, and I'm so against that. That we don't need to be banning things. People's property is their property. If the cities can do whatever they want, but the county is unincorporated.
Right.
We don't need to be regulating storage containers.
All right. Well, Don, I hate to cut us off because we could continue this conversation another hour, I believe.
Yes, sir. All
right, Don. Well, thank you so much. And any final quick comment for the audience?
No, I just appreciate your time, and it's good talking to both of you. I appreciate you and Margie's openness, and you're always civil to me, and I very much appreciate that.
All right, Don. Well, thanks for calling in.
Have a good day, guys.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. All right, we got commercial messages to get in, Margie, so here we go. We'll be back in just a moment.